Do you do multiple drafts, or do you improve as you go along? We want to know.
I'll just stick your finger up your ass.
It's been a while since you said that.
Yes.
It's all with Marchese and Buller.
Welcome to the Marchese and Buller Show. I'm Will Marchese.
And I'm Gary Buller.
My glamorous assistant is Gary Buller.
Ooh.
Over there in Manchester, England. But today what we're going to be talking about is how you draft, how you write. It's going to be a writer's one, this one. I believe it was Joe Lansdale. If it wasn't, then I apologise, but I seem to have his name in my head. I believe he said that he doesn't really draft. He writes a story and improves it as it goes, and then by the end, he has a workable piece of fiction, just then edits, for spelling and grammar, and then submits. He said he doesn't need to go through first, second, third drafts. And I was kind of thinking when I read it, a couple of things really, two contrasting views. One of them was, I was really glad to hear it because that's kind of what I do. Just to take a step back, when I first started writing, I would do up to 10 drafts of a story. I'd write it out, then write it again, then write it again, then write it again, and just work my way through it and name each one like, the next numeric. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Story 1, story 2, story 3, story 4. And it was a bit of a waste of time, because the differences were so subtle between them that there was no point. So what I kind of do now when I'm writing, and it's been a bit of a bugbear and a blessing, is I edit as I go along, and I always have kind of had done for a long time. I'll start the first paragraph and I'll read through it and I'll go, oh, actually that's not quite right. And so rather than sort of waiting to draft 2 to improve things, I sort of improve as I go along. To completely contrast that, I think Joe Lansdale's in a position to say that because he's a professional writer, and I think he's so experienced at his craft that he can write one draft. He can just throw one down because he's good enough to do that. But I don't think it's the dumb thing to tell other writers to do that, though.
As you get better too, you can, you're more confident in what you're putting down.
I mean, I was speaking to Joe Hill, my old friend Joe, and I asked him about it, how many drafts he does, and he told me that for 20th Century Ghost, when he was going through those short stories, he did between 2 and 3 drafts of a story, which is not a lot at all, but that's kind of how many I sort of do these days. I kind of, like I say, just improve as I go along, and then the next one along, I'll include new things. But yeah, apparently that's what Joe was saying, and I was kind of wondering, Will gets his pen out, what does he do with regards drafting things? When Will's writing his stories, do you do consecutive drafts? Do you improve the stories you go along? Do you think that maybe it's the best way to go about it to gradually improve, or do you think you should draft by draft? What do you kind of think?
Funny you mentioned Joe Hill, because I had just recently read an article about him, and he said that when he goes to his father's house, Stephen King, they talk about writing and such, and he said that his father's actually to the point where what he puts down on the first time is pretty much what's going out. So as you get better, and as you're more, I guess, confident in what you're putting down and who you are and what your voice is, I guess you just get more confident. And me, I do a whole bunch of different things. I never do the same thing. So sometimes I will edit as I go. Sometimes I'll just get the story out, because if I feel I'm going to forget it, sometimes getting the whole story out will give you things. You say, oh, that would actually, I could take this out, but I can change this and it'll work for that. Sometimes editing as you go also helps, because there'll be something that's so glaringly like a big mistake, you wanna edit it and fix it. But if it's something that you can't search in maybe 10 seconds and be done with, I say just let it go for now, because there'll be times when I'm looking up maybe a certain word and I'm saying there's different ways to say that word or different spellings. They will mean something different. If I can't find it immediately, I'll just put whatever, and then I'll just go on, because it'll make me, I'll spend a half an hour working on something when I could actually be getting ideas and words out. So it all depends. I change as I go.
I think sometimes I frustrate myself when I'm doing that, because, or at least I used to before I kind of read what Joe said, because I'd sit down sometimes and I'd do 200 words a session, and in an hour, and I'd be like constantly editing and rewording things, and I was thinking, yeah, but surely the idea is to get the story down, and I'm a ditherer with it. I'll just spend ages on a paragraph, and I think sometimes, occasionally, it is detrimental to my writing because, like you said, you're not getting the words down. You're concentrating too much on that little bit, and then by the time you move on to the next paragraph, you kind of lost your thread a little bit.
Here's another thing I do, actually. If I'm writing a story, because I'm trying to do that thing where as I get an idea, or if I see a scene, if I see something that happens in the subway or something, and I say, you know what, that'll be an interesting story, I start writing the scene out. If I get to a certain point, and it doesn't, like, I'm like, wait a second, oh, maybe I have to do this, and I'm fussing with it too much, I just move on to another story. Because I say, if this story is not working, and I'm messing around with this, messing around with that, I try not to waste too much time with it, because some of my best stories I wrote in a night.
Yeah.
And I just slightly edited or I did this. I think that there is something to getting it right the first time. There's something, you know, and if a scene isn't working out, or if a word isn't working out, or if a sentence just doesn't sound right, rewrite the sentence. End up making the story better because it'll sound more smooth and a little more comprehensible.
Yeah. I've kind of changed tact a little bit. I'm going to sort of start saving stories a little bit rather than just throwing them out there for submission. I'm going to hold off a little bit, save 2 or 3 of them, and then by the time I've got round to finishing my third, I can then go back to the first and look at it with fresh eyes, as opposed to just going, right, that's done, bam, throw it out there. Because, you know, how many times have you submitted a story and then looked at it ages later, whether it's been published or not, and you've thought, oh my God, I could have written that there, that should have been, you know, shouldn't have been in that scene, you know, I could have done this with this, and that'd have been so much better, you know. That's
where I think a blog posts would help you too, because I'm doing it just so I can write, so I can get words on something. That helps you free up a lot of the time too, because you're typing and then you get an idea, you start typing story. But we want to know what you think. Do you do multiple drafts, or do you improve as you go along? We want to know.
See you next time. Bye. It's all with Marchese and Paula. It's all with Marchese and Paula.
But we want to know what you think.
Yeah, what do you think?
Do you what was this whole thing again?
It was all about do you do multiple drafts, or do you improve as you go along?
Do you do multiple drafts, or your story? Also, I'm eating a lot of writing fiber, and it's going through my system right now. And when I get those stories out, writing coffee, but this is coffee with extra fiber in it. And when I get those stories out, Gary,
yes,
I'm gonna need a lot of air freshener.
Yeah, when Will's writing his stories, do you?
Who's Will?
Who's Will? Oh, sorry, you're Gary, aren't you? There you go. There you go. Well, Gary. Yeah.
Well, it's actually funny. Okay. And Gary, actually, this one you're going to start off.
Okay.
You say welcome, Mark. You know.
Oh, okay. Tell me when you're ready.
Anytime.
Okay, cool.
Oh, wait. Let's get the thumbnail.
The thumbnail will be what we're talking about. Drafting.
Maybe like pulling your hair out.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome to the Marchese and Buller Show. Do you sorry. Yeah, I'm gonna have to do this. I'm just phlegmed up to it. Yeah, it's all my sinus and everything's
Oh.
horrible.